Let's make a video
Okay.
about you. Yeah. Okay, I'll just hit it off by saying, hello, this is Cuckoo. I'm at a different location today with this man's studio. Is something called Sonicstate.
That's right.
In my head, I was thinking Sonic Lab suddenly, but that's something else.
That's just one of the things that we do.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Sonic Lab is generally to do with reviews of equipment.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
the sort of general thread of that.
Yeah. And this man is called Nick Batt.
Hello.
Hello. Hello. I'm very curious to learn more about you, actually. I've watched your channel for years and years, and I'm very familiar with everything you put out, but I'm not that familiar with how this channel came to be and what's your background as a musician.
Okay.
Yeah. So maybe we could take it back to where this love for electronic musical instruments kind of started.
A long time ago, I think it was probably, I had a piano teacher who was an eccentric Mexican lady, and she used to have Jean-Michel Jarre going off in the background.
Oh, nice.
And I think it was probably Oxygen.
Yeah.
First, I started to hear those kind of sounds.
Yeah.
I don't think I actually bought anything till Equinox, till a bit later on. And then about the same time, I think Vince Clarke was doing his stuff with Depeche Mode, and I'd heard those in the sort of pop charts, because when I was a lad, pop music was very kind of influential in your sort of everyday culture, certainly in the UK. It was just coming out of the punk scene, and, you know, it was all part of life. So that new breed of sounds obviously just sort of caught my ear.
But even in like straight up pop music back at that time, that was also heavily synth influenced, I think.
Well, we're talking probably 77, 78, so
Yeah.
not so much then. It was
No,
still
okay.
pub rock, punk bands.
I see. Yeah.
And but yeah, there was. I mean, it was beginning. I mean, I don't think that really took hold until a bit later on.
Yeah.
Till sort of early 80s.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
That's in my head when I think about at least early 80s kind of hit songs. All the melodies, when I think back, is, that's actually a synthesizer. Probably a very well-known factory patch of.
Well, I think the other thing is also things kind of, I don't know whether I'm just not focused on pop music so much these days, but it felt like things were moving a lot faster. So you went through entire sort of, you know, I think in the space of 2 or 3 years there was sort of punk, there was heavy metal was really big, then it was punk, then there was kind of mod, then there was ska, then there was electro. So all of these things kind of happened in a really short space of time, and they're all quite radically different pieces of music types, and I'm not sure that we get the same. There's a more of a genericism to things that most people hear these days, because the platforms which people hear music on are perhaps more far-reaching, so they are more representative of more of an average of the thing, rather than the peaks and the troughs.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. It's hard to tell today because there is no mainstream channels to consume music anymore. You kind of get your little snippets from some influencer or some YouTuber that you might like. Maybe it's background music in a game.
Yeah.
Like specifically for kids today growing up. Where do they encounter music?
Well, but that's interesting. Yet, quite a lot of kids that you would think would be far too young to know kind of know all the words to Beatles songs.
Yeah.
And sort of classic songs that you think, well, where did you hear that?
In memes.
You think?
I think
the whole thing? I don't know. Yeah,
I
maybe.
don't. No, I don't know.
Perceived sort of knowledge, I don't know. It's genetic.
Genetic. Yeah, I should have some of those genes. I always forget lyrics.
Yeah, lyrics have never been that big a deal to me. It's always been about the
But even the Beatles, right? They use synthesizers.
A bit.
A little bit. Here and there.
Yeah, I don't know. I should know, but I know there is tell of this.
Yeah.
And Mellotron, they did.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know. Yeah, there was a bit. I think there's a picture of George Harrison with a 55 or something somewhere.
Yeah. There's many pictures of you with different gears.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I have a lot, and of which we have a pair.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. Is there like a first synthesizer or a first kind of instrument you gravitated towards?
Yeah, I had this. I did an interview not that long ago where I kind of rediscovered.
Yeah.
And I think what happened was it was more about what one could afford. And so to begin with, I rented a synth that a local music shop would rent, and it was a Korg micro preset.
Oh, nice.
And it was, not really, didn't represent the sounds I was hearing on records.
No.
And then the first synth I could afford also was a Korg. It was an MS-10 I bought.
Oh.
And again, that didn't sound anything like
No.
the stuff I was hearing, which I guess was Roland's.
Yeah.
So I didn't really find anything that made the sounds I actually wanted to make. So my first synthesizers were disappointing
Yeah.
to me,
Yeah.
sonically, because A, I didn't know how they worked, and B, they weren't being used to make the sort of sounds I was hearing.
Yeah. I was hearing this, I'm not sure where I heard this story, but there was someone that was given a Moog synthesizer at some point, and he was like, "Oh, but this is very expensive. I'm sure you want to give this to me." Yeah, I tried it a bunch of times, but it doesn't work. Oh, what's wrong with it? I can only play one note at a time. That's one of the way it's designed.
Yeah.
So maybe like growing up with piano.
Yeah,
And then
I knew it was monophonic.
Yeah.
My first polysynth was a Jupiter 4, which I bought second hand. So
Yeah.
and that was a bit closer to the sort of sounds I was hearing at that time. Yeah.
Did you even then kind of dive into sound design and explore?
Probably not that much. I mean, that synth had kind of buttons on the underneath, which were sort of like trumpet, trombone, guitar, whatever, blue buttons, and so I didn't really. I think I was just trying to, and it had 8 memories, so I had to be quite judicious. I was playing in a band, so it was kind of whatever they were used for that. I can't remember now. It was a great synth. They didn't stay in tune very much, but it was terrible to gig because it was so heavy. But apart from that.
For me, I went to the music store after school every day as a teenager, just going to the synth corner, trying out different synths. And for me, at the time, if it had a sequencer, that was one of my kind of go-tos. And if it had orchestral sounds, that was another check mark for me.
Right.
So I gravitated towards the Korg M1.
Yeah.
So that became my first synth that I actually purchased.
Yeah. Well, it's my first workstation.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I bought it. It was it's the first thing I bought. That was a keyboard. I think before that was a D110, which was the first multi-timbral synth, which meant I could get into sequencing and all of that kind of stuff. So that's how I started.
Yeah, nice. But you played in bands?
A little bit, yeah. I wouldn't say with any great success, but enough.
Yeah. Oh, nice. And as a keyboard player then? Or?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think my first one, if you can picture this, me sitting there with a Korg MS-10 and a vocal mic singing.
Oh, yeah.
Terrible music. But, it was the start, and I think I realised quite quickly I didn't want to be the singer. So that was good. Good to know for early.
Did you grow up kind of finding the love for making your own music, or was it
I was really
well.
I first got into it, but sound on sound cassettes, trying to build up things. I got really into the idea of making recordings, and I was doing that before 4-tracks became available, and then I got a Tascam 244. I don't think it was new. I think it was used, and that really set me off. And then I was like, oh right, okay. And then I started getting into the idea of kind of making things. Yeah. And I think that was even before a sequencer. So I had a drum machine and a 4-track. Then I've got into the Atari and MIDI and all of that stuff later on.
Yeah. But it's really cool. Like I come in a little bit later than you, but you've truly seen the birth of computer engineering and been there the whole time.
Yeah, before there were aeroplanes and petrol-driven cars. yeah. I mean,
but in terms of music recording.
Well, again, this is something that I think people kind of consider that sort of MIDI and synthesizers were the driving force, and I think it was actually more to do with mixing and recording effects, because Alesis came in with there's a MIDI Verb 2 up there, and early DSP effects that enabled people, and the SPX 90, things that enabled you to make sounds that were very close to what you were hearing on records. And I think that was probably the bigger revolution, because that meant that, because prior to that, it was all, AMS or lexicons, and you would have them in your studio. Or it would just be an effects pedal in professional studios would be the only way you would access that kind of stuff. And that made a really big difference to what people could do in their own homes.
Yeah. I think in your own home, that's a key word. It's me, when I started out with computers aiding me in my music, it was during the late 80s, was it? Maybe early 90s with Amiga. I never had the Atari, but Amiga was not as popular in MIDI land, but more on the sequencer and tracker sampler land. And that was, finding that very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when you realise that you can make things that are approaching what you're hearing, and then having the tools to sculpt them. I mean, it was effects and also affordable mixing, because mixing desks up to then were also extremely expensive. You had two options. You'd either have like an old amp that had multiple channels that were designed for a PA, or you would have a studio desk, which were installed. You know, they weren't ever picked up. You know, you didn't pick one up and move it around. It would be an installation. So as soon as the surface mount technology came aboard and people were able to buy discrete mixing facilities and effects, made a massive difference.
Yeah, and then fast forward to today, it's everyone can afford it, even to some degree in their phones.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, everything's available. I mean, and I think there were, you know, there's just been various revolutions along the way that have enabled that, and also you get examples of people who encouraged it. I remember, you know, there are things like there were some seminal albums that were based around and publicised as being based around, you know, home recording studios. Prince Sign of the Times was a big one. That was, and everyone was going, wow, that just sounds like a demo, but it's still got all of this stuff. And there was another one, a really random one. I think it was Bruce Springsteen. And I think it was a few, but he had a few big hits off the album. I can't remember what it was called. I mean, it's not my kind of music. He's a great songwriter, but it was known that he just sat there with a 4-track and made the songs, and obviously enhanced them. But so we were being informed that you could use this stuff to make actual, you know, music that somebody might listen to other than your mum, you know.
So, did you record music? Did you publish any music?
No? I did the usual kind of teenage angsty kind of stuff. I wrote songs. I think most of what I was doing was really experimenting with what I could do with the sound, and that side of things. And I've always been really interested in what makes things work. And so I was interested in, you know, I eventually got into MIDI and figured out all of that stuff, and then built a system. And then, you know, my trajectory was I was doing that for my own pleasure, but I was learning about it. And then I started doing it for people in studios, because, you know, nobody really knew about MIDI, and they'd go in and go, oh, can you make this work for us? So I ended up I did a bunch of session work really for local studios and local artists, because this town had quite a few has-beens who were still recording. And local as in still here? To Bath,
to Bath. Yeah. Wow. Oh, nice. So I got the impression you moved back here from somewhere else. No,
I've been here the whole time.
Oh, right.
I mean, I kind of travelled and worked elsewhere, but no, I've always lived here.
Oh, nice. I've just been introduced to Bath for the first time today.
We had a drive round.
Yeah, it's a beautiful limestone city. Everything is in this same hue and shade all over town.
Only took to the nice bits, though.
Yeah. But, so this YouTube journey, how did that come about?
Well, we started Sonicstate in about 1990. Yeah. And it was all to do with text, and we had all these grand ideas. And then I'm trying to remember what we started to kind of... We were shooting videos. We started to go to a couple of trade shows, and then we started to film a couple of things at trade shows, and we designed a workflow that somehow got the stuff. Myself and Andy kind of were working like dogs behind the scenes, recording to tape and transcoding and getting stuff back. But then I mean, never occurred to I don't think either of us to be in front of the camera. And then we had a go. I think I just said, I'm going to try and review this thing. I think it was a MIDI Man or M Audio MIDI Man, I think it was. Oxygenate.
The green one? No.
The Oxygenate.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I reviewed that, and I just sort of give it a go. And we kind of came, the concept in my head, once we started it, was this sort of, there used to be a chef in the UK called Keith Floyd, who would break the wall down. So he'd say, come on in, come in a bit closer, and so have a dialogue with the camera. And that was the sort of approach I took. And and we just tried that, and it's sort of like, oh, that actually works. And I found that I was able to communicate on camera more effectively than I thought I could.
Yeah.
And so it was like, that's when it started, really.
In the 90s.
Yeah, but that was before YouTube. We weren't putting on
YouTube,
YouTube. Yeah, we were doing stuff.
So how did you publish this?
We would turn it into something like Real Media or WMV files, put them online, and then if it was successful, have a massive bandwidth bill.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. Yes. Success used to be expensive.
Yeah. No, you don't think about bandwidth anymore, but someone still has to pay for it.
Well, someone's making money.
Yeah.
I think YouTube are okay. I think they covered their expenses pretty effectively.
Yeah.
The thing is commercializing. You know, usually for most people who do this, it starts off as a hobby or something you're interested in.
Yeah.
I mean, as we know, making money from music is increasingly difficult.
Yeah.
And this is just another sort of way of making money from creativity, if you're fortunate. But it's a challenging. It's challenging, you know. It's, no one's getting rich, and very few people are. It certainly isn't me or you, I would imagine. But you know, as long as you could do what you want to do, then maybe that's enough for the time being. You have to be prepared to do it because you love it. You know, don't think about the money. I mean, it's nice if you can afford to eat.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Stuff.
Eating is nice. But it is. It was, for me at least. It wasn't. I didn't take anything for granted when I started out with YouTube. It was more like a hobby, as you said, like something I enjoyed doing, and suddenly kind of, I wouldn't say snowballed, but turned into something that was a little bit profitable.
But the thing is also, when you start and you see that people are liking it, it feeds, you know, I mean, it does feed your ego, but it feeds your desire to do it again, because you get, I mean, you know, on a simple transactional level, here's something I've done, oh, that's really good. I mean, we're almost at that point with the sort of micro social media now, but back then we were doing sort of longer forms. We weren't making telly, but it still took quite a lot of technology to be able to make video. Video has now become so much easier. We couldn't use phones or anything back then. We had to have proper video equipment, you know, which is tremendously expensive.
Was there a point where, which you still remember, where you could kind of stop any side jobs or main jobs and go full time on this?
No, because I've always worked for myself, so I've always had kind of a few things going on. I mean, I've been doing that much more recently, but I used to work in, you know, I worked for various bands, and I was involved in other music and had a kind of music career, which enabled me to sort of, you know, survive while this all took shape, I suppose.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, for me too. I think I still remember, like, there was a point for me where, like, realized that if I want to be better at this, I need to cut something else out, because it's about time you spend perfecting the stuff you do. And I think it's the 10th anniversary this year for me to be like full time on. I think
we're 30 this year or next year.
But
sometime.
As you, I've also been self-employed and freelancing, so it's a bit of a mix.
Yeah, and I think, you know, that's one thing that, you know, has changed. The idea that certainly in the creative industry, I'm sure it's the same with animators or painters or photographers. It's not like, I'm going to take photographs, beautiful photographs, and sell them, and that'll be my job. It's like, well, I also do wedding photography on the side because it pays, and I also do pictures of dogs or whatever it may be. Do you know what I mean? Whereas, and with us, you have to come up with all these little different sort of hustles almost, and each of them join together, hopefully, and make something that can sustain you. And that's a challenge for anybody who wants to do this kind of thing. You know, first do it for the love, because you'll find a way to feed yourself, but start with that and then you figure out the rest.
Yeah, that's an advice for all of you out there who wanted to aspiring video creators or musical artists.
It's a lot easier now because you can use your phone. Your phones are fantastic. You know? We always used to carry around, you know, you might see us at trade shows now, we got phone rigs. We used to carry DSLRs and it used to look great, but it was a heavy lift, you know. You need auto, you know, if you're thinking totally about the focal length and the exposure, because we talk to our subjects at the same time, that would suffer, or one would suffer. So you need to sort of cut that. You need to figure out a workflow that works for you, or you do something in a very unique way that only you then do and people kind of like the way it looks, or, you know. So there's two different routes to it, you know. But as you're fine, if you could talk and get people to talk,
Yeah.
then just film it.
Yeah.
You know, don't overthink it too much.
Yeah. Good advice. I'm thinking of the location of Bath is just next to Bristol, and Bristol, as I understand it, has been a bubbling music scene in the UK.
Yeah,
Has that been inspiring to you?
Well, I mean, when we first started, Bath had its own thing,
Yeah.
and Bristol was just coming up. When I first started making music, sort of commercially and having success, Bristol was just getting going with Smith and Mighty and Massive Attack and the Wild Bunch, and Bath was coming out of the sort of Tears for Fears, you know, it was big local band, and you know, a few other bits and pieces, and it was. So there was, and Peter Gabriel moved in sort of locally. So there was all this sort of stuff happening around that time. Bristol was more of an urban thing. I mean, Bath is not really a kind of, you know, street level kind of urban music scene. Yeah. Bristol much more so, and so you know, it was inspiring what was happening there. But and I think I'm trying to think. I think Smith and Mighty was the first big hit. I think they were Three Stripe Records. I think it was. Yeah. I can't remember what Rob and Raz. I think that they used to live in Bristol, and just they had a massive DDA desk in the sort of back bedroom, and it was just, you know, and they'd mix. But they were huge, you know, and all that sort of white label culture and all that. There was a lot of sort of boiling energy. I mean, we were always more, you know, the stuff that I did was always more pop, so perhaps less well regarded by the cool kids.
Yeah. And do you feel like that kind of music, the creative music scene in the region is still something that fuels today's music scene?
I mean, I'm sort of probably not the target audience these days. I'm not, my finger's not on the pulse, but as I understand, Bristol is actually pretty, well, it's considered, because back then there were all these kind of centres of music. So there was Liverpool, there was Manchester scene, the Bristol scene. There were these scenes that were kind of it was sort of helped build the sort of tribalism that was back then. And things have become a bit more generic, I think, now. But I think Bristol is again is seen as a centre of music and creativity, very much so. And I think it's to do with, because there's a lot of urban stuff there, but also the regeneration of the city centre. So like's happened in Berlin and places, money comes in and then things, you know, some of this money does make its way to the arts or facilities. I mean, I don't know about that these days, but I think that always fuels that whole process.
Speaking of Bristol, right now we're recording this a couple of days before a big synth tech music festival called Machine Bristronica. Yeah. And just looking at the poster, it strikes me as not, I mean, it is a music tech event with manufacturers showing the stuff, but more focus on the posters and the promotion is that it's a music event. Yeah. And I really like the skew.
This the idea of the hybrid event.
Yeah.
And the people who run it, Elevator Sound, shop in Bristol, great modular shop. Yeah. Which, as with many of these modular shops, legendary, but it's actually about the size of this. Yeah, it's very small, but it's got a vibe. The guy who owns that business, his background is club promotion, so he knows how to put stuff on. Oh, nice. And last year was the first year where that I noticed that they'd really put, because before that it was a different format. This time, it's in a kind of club environment, and they've got great PA set, and he's just booked really good music and great stuff. Whereas I think, you know, even Superbooth, the music is, while it's integrated, it's an afterthought. Perhaps it's not what's drawing the people. Whereas I think with Bristronica, there's sort of a bit of both. People might come to sit for the music, and then see the other stuff, and vice versa. Yeah, it's a good format. It's a very vibey place, actually. Yeah,
I'm looking forward to it very much. And judging by the whole lineup, I'm maybe going to spend more time listening to the shows.
Yeah, and he always puts really good PA systems in as well.
Oh, so, nice.
And lights and stuff. So it's got a real. Yeah, it's a very immersive vibe, and there's various different stages. There's a sort of big techno stage where people perform, and then there's a few DJ places where there's maybe a bit of modular, and there are some really good DJs as well. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Cool. And this year it's 2 days.
Yeah.
So it's more of a full-fledged weekend experience.
Yeah. I think it's Yeah, and but I think it's going to grow, and I think it's very much. There's quite a lot of ties between them and Superbooth as well. So I think it's not like a competing thing. I mean, obviously last weekend was Synthfest, which is in Sheffield, which is very much more about the tech and less about the music, and it's more of a traditional, old school sort of thing. And while it's fun, it doesn't have the same broad appeal, I think. And I think we probably need to get more people just coming along to see what's going on, so that we can all. There are more people coming through behind us.
Yeah, and just I mean, marketing an event as a cultural event with music, and then you don't even have to know that it's also a place where you could check out gear. For a lot of people, maybe just want to go there and experience music, live music.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's the same thing. I think that's the same principle that I think Superbooth were trying or have been trying to do, which is to make it culturally fun. Yeah. Which is why you see that in Berlin. It's a much broader range of people. There's lots of young folk there and women and whatever. There's a big sort of reflection of the whole of society. So, and I think that's the answer really when you can.
Yeah. So how about Sonicstate in terms of reaching people outside of the the bubble?
It's true. When we first started, we were kind of very much the kind of upstarts because we were the people doing that stuff and embracing the web. I guess now we've been going for long enough, we're probably quite establishment. So it's more challenging. I mean, I think if I tried to actively seek young people and I'd probably just look like a twat. So I think maybe I should be just careful. I mean, obviously we want to appeal to as many people as possible, but I don't want to. I mean, the idea is obviously just get more people involved who perhaps do appeal to others. Because I'm a bloke that looks like this. I'm not going to appeal to kind of teenage kids necessarily. So I'm fully aware of that.
Yeah. But I appreciate you, and I look like this.
One thing that we will say, I should point out that we shot with Cuckoo a piece where we were playing on these instruments. It's great fun. So we I guess we could play on this, and that would be end it out.
Yeah, we could do. Just gonna think. Is there anything more I want to ask you? No, I don't know. Fantastic thing to end with. A little jam with the Super Gemini and the Super 8 by Audio Audio. These are some of my favourite synths ever. Whenever I see these at Superbooth, it's the highlight of my show. And whenever I have played them at the show, I'm like, maybe I'm not going to play another synth this show because I really enjoyed this.
It's interesting, isn't it, that these always seem to be very well received. There's something about the care and the ethos that's gone into them that is very. I mean, every time we post a video with George, people are just like, they're falling over themselves to hear one and get their hands on one. And it's a very, there's something about the aesthetic that is very appealing, isn't it?
And this is something that springs out of the region.
Yeah, this is
from here.
Bristol. George is based in Bristol. Yeah, that's right. Yep, Bristol synth.
Bristol synths.
Not many. Well, Modal were Bristol as well. Modal
that's right.
So that's two I can think of. There's probably some other people. Oh, Finlay Shakespeare, he's Bristol.
Okay.
So there are, three manufacturers. There's probably others. I do apologise if I've
like in the modular scene, maybe others. Like
probably
Big T.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, let's try something from scratch. Let's see what it is. Okay, I'm just going to play a random patch.
with the one note. I know I'm on safer ground there. You could do the fancy stuff.
I don't know how fancy it was, but thank you so much.
No problem. Great fun.
Appreciate it. Man.
Cheers, man. See you on Saturday.
See you on Saturday, and thanks for all your hard work with the channel. It's not anything that makes itself.
Absolutely.
Lots of hard
And
work.
here we are. We've turned the set around, actually.
Yeah, for the first time.
Yeah, I think this is the first time. I like this back-to-back format. I encourage you to watch the one that we did. I think that's going to come out good, actually.
Breaking.
I'm saying
new
it now,
ground.
but I've got to edit it. It might be terrible, but I don't think it was. It felt good.
No, it's good. Yeah.
Cool.
Cool.
Alrighty.